Hi there, welcome back to the Non-Traditional Veterinarian. I am the Non-Traditional Veterinarian. Maybe this is the first episode that you are watching on YouTube. Welcome. Maybe this is the first episode that you're listening to on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It is so great to connect. And if you're new around here, well, I hope that you love non-traditional approaches and being open-minded, because that's exactly what we're going to do today, talking about metronidazole and why I almost always don't use it for diarrhea. And I see it used a lot. And I want to bring another perspective to you as a pet parent and be able for this to be a tool and a resource in your pocket when it comes to your pet's health, especially when the sneaky diarrhea, the sneaky poopy issues sneak up on us. And so I'm going to walk you through why I don't typically use or reach for metronidazole on diarrhea, at least initially. And it has a place. I'm not going to say it's never to be used, but because of how it affects the gut and the kind of snowball effects that can happen. And so that's what I want to talk about. So that way, if you're the pet parent who is always going in, anytime your dog has diarrhea, you're calling your vet or you're going in and you're wanting metronidazole and you're just not satisfied unless you have it, I hope that this brings another viewpoint, another perspective to you. Because when we're just blasting diarrhea with metronidazole, we're kind of missing some really important pieces here that come to your dog or cat's health because both can take metronidazole. And because our pets do deserve full spectrum care. They don't just deserve fixing the symptom. They don't always just deserve a full spectrum antibiotic. They deserve that whole approach. And it isn't just about survival. It is about helping them thrive and the downstream effects of using these medications. And when they do need to be used, because we have tried everything, and this is like, well, we haven't tried this, these are tools in your toolbox so that you can be aware. So that way, going forward, we can really set your pet up for health and success and thriving. And so, if your pet has ever been handed metronidazole from diarrhea, or again, you are the pet parent that you're like, but I love metronidazole, my dog gets diarrhea, whether it's from stress, from 4th of July, New Year's Eve, the holidays, guests coming over, or grandma sneaking your dog some turkey on Thanksgiving, or we don't know why, which is exactly the purpose of let's holding back on metronidazole, is this is for you. And I want you to hopefully have open ears and an open mind while listening to this. So metronidazole is an antibiotic, and it's actually also an anti-protozoal. Protozoas are types of parasites as well. It is commonly used in dogs and cats when we think that there's maybe a bacterial overgrowth, when there's just blanket diarrhea or soft stool or vomiting and diarrhea, we just don't know why. It is the go-to medication for that. It is the go-to when there is sometimes even intestinal parasites, sometimes giardia. Maybe your dog has had it for that. Maybe colitis, which is a blanket term for irritation of the colon. And so it's a go-to because we're in the business of wanting to help pets. And who doesn't want to help a pet feel better as quickly as possible? I totally understand. I also value being able to give my clients and my patients tools to help them rebound as quickly as possible. But when it is the go-to, because it works quickly rather than because diarrhea is messy, right? It never comes at the perfect time. Not that there's ever a great time, but it's always like when you're trying to leave out of town, you're on your way to work, there's something going on always, right? And so it's messy. There's setbacks with house training. It's when you're out of town and your dog sitter's watching them or you're trying to go out of town. There's cost and time of diagnostics, of figuring out why your dog is again now having diarrhea. And so when we reach for it out of a reflex, we may be overlooking like the whole story that the gut is trying to tell us, that the whole story on what that pet, your pet's health is trying to tell us. They're kind of like waving a little picket sign, like, hey, something's not right. Hey, something's not right. And sometimes it raises it and it's like, yo, something is not right. And so that's where we come in, is to try and help that rather than a reflex band-aid. Let's get to the root cause. And if we have to have that reflex of here's this medication, okay, how can we be mindful of the downstream effects? And so antibiotic use in the gut isn't benign. It's not, because it affects the microbiome. It doesn't just go in and select the bad guys and then leave the good. Unfortunately, it kind of gets whatever's in its path sometimes. And so it may select for resistant bugs. It may unmask underlying issues. It can set up for allergies in the future. It can set up for inflammatory bowel disease in the future. It can affect so much because so much of the immune system is in the gut. And so sometimes we reach for these quick fixes, we have repeat problems and we have a cycle that continues. And so your pet's gut isn't just this thing in their middle of their body that, holds food, digests food, produces poop. It is a dynamic ecosystem. It is so cool the way it was designed to work. It's got bacteria, it's got fungi, it's got immune system cells, it's got epithelial barrier cells, which are essentially these kind of like skin cells of the intestine that are like the bouncers of keeping things out that aren't supposed to be there and keeping the things in. And when that epithelial barrier becomes compromised, things leak out and the immune system reacts. There's digesta, there's important cells. And so when it is balanced and it is healthy, there's good digestion, there's good mood, there's good nutrient absorption, there's good immune regulation, there's very minimal to no inflammation as well. But when it's disturbed from a variety of different reasons, and what I'm not saying is metronidazole is the only reason, but antibiotic use, stress, chemicals, highly processed food, when it's disturbed, you have symptoms like diarrhea, which is how then they get put on metronidazole. You also have long-term implications like chronic GI problems, allergies, ear issues, immune dysregulation, anal gland issues, poop issues. There's a whole cascade of that happens. And so using metronidazole can absolutely disrupt or interfere with that regulation, that balance of the gut. And so it doesn't just kill the bad bacteria, like I said, it kills some good ones. And these good ones are really important. It can alter the population of the microbiome. So then the shift of the evenness of how are they evenly distributed. So maybe we still have good bacteria, but now we have a lot more bad bacteria. It reduces the diversity. We want a diverse gut because diverse gut is very balanced. Everyone has their role. It's like think of a city or a community. Everyone has their role in making sure that that city or that community is thriving and working properly. You have police, you have fire, you have city council, you have all these things. And so it reduces that diversity. And over time, this shows up as chronic GI issues, chronic skin issues, chronic ear issues, weight gain, lumps and bumps. There's a lot more to it than just being diarrhea. And so what happens often is a dog or cat gets diarrhea. They're often, not always, but they're often prescribed metronidazole. It stops, but that underlying issue is more likely there, whether it's diet transition, stress, the microbiome is already imbalanced, food intolerances, chemical exposures, inflammation, diseases. And so it remains. And a few months goes by, everything seems fine until you have that flare up. And then that ecosystem is then disrupted again. And so the way I really embody approaching this, and what I'm not saying is that it is my way or the highway. What I am saying is that here's another perspective to consider and to also consider the downstream effects is looking at digging into the nutrition, digging into the lifestyle, digging into their environment, digging into their stress levels, and not just hitting a pill, but using kind of detective work and then tools in our toolbox. Because what actually happens is that there is an effect on the gut. There's good bacteria that are reduced, and they compete with bad bacteria to help maintain that gut barrier. Bile acids, which are your gallbladder, their liver, are very important in this. The gut helps convert, the gut microbes help convert these bile acids. A disruption can lead to being more of these irritated bile acids in the colon, which increases diarrhea if we don't have the right bacteria to help do this. Think of it also as like a conveyor line. If you don't have the right people there to slow it down or speed it up or get the boxes off, and all of a sudden it's just going haywire, those boxes are just going to fly off. There's no one there to regulate it. The immune system, because so much of the immune system is the gut. And so it can be reactive. It can show up as inflammation. It can show up as leakage, which then can show up as cancers, autoimmune conditions, allergies, inflammation. And so what the diarrhea or soft stool, it does deserve to be addressed. And so often it will resolve, and then there's an increase in frequency. You wean off, but there's relapses, or they're good for a while, but then it happens again, especially for the dogs that where the pet owners are like, I don't know, nothing has changed. And I get it. It so often happens where something happens and we're like, okay, but what happened to cause this? It's like, what happened to cause this may have been 6 or 12 months ago. There's a lot of factors that go into this. And so not just a knee-jerk reaction of relying on metronidazole can hopefully decrease that incidences of what caused this and why did this happen. And so there's secondary signs too that can happen from all this: increased gassy pets, changes in their coat, more skin itching, increased food sensitivities because that gut is imbalanced and because the really special bacteria that we need to digest certain types of food sources, carbohydrates versus fiber versus proteins, they're affected. Weight fluctuations, maybe they're underweight or they're overweight. I've had patients with both come to me that had kind of messed up guts. Picky eating, another factor that can happen. And so I see this often where it's repeated GI treatments rather than root cause work. And so being open-minded to try and figure out what the root cause is so that we're not perpetuating the system. Because in a typical model of a clinical practice is there's diarrhea, let's give metronidazole, maybe plus or minus a diet change or even just a short-term diet change, and check back if it's still bad. Check back if it's not better. Where I really value approaching this is taking a lens and let's looking at their gut health. Let's look at their nutrition. Let's look at their inflammation. Let's look at their lifestyle. Let's look at their food quality. Let's look at their stress, their exercise, their sleep, the gut-brain axis, chemicals that they can be exposed to. So taking a deeper look rather than here's a pill. And so, yes, starting with diagnostics can be really valuable. Even simple fecals to test for intestinal parasites, right? Because that can cause diarrhea in pets. And so being mindful, do they have hookworms or roundworms or giardia or coccidia? What could be going on? And then using nutrition and lifestyle as a first line or parallel to that. So a high quality digestible diet that is not highly processed. Eliminating or rotating food ingredients as needed, maybe depending on intolerances. Making sure there's enough fiber, soluble and insoluble. Considering if we need to add fiber in the form of prebiotics or probiotics as well. And then if we absolutely need antibiotics, whether it is metronidazole or even another one, absolutely need it, we need to use it, then yes. And then combine it with reestablishing that microbiome ecosystem. Maybe it is probiotics. Maybe it is a diet shift. Maybe it is a gut healing protocol like glutamine or marshmallow root or slippery elm. It is gut microbiome testing. Do we need to do fecal transplants? So having that kind of established on, okay, we've got to use this. And afterwards, here's our strategy plan so that we can be proactive rather than being reactive, because this is going to show up later on. And so it means that you can access food and environment and stressors to help support your pet. Is there a new baby in the home? Is there a recent move? And so also is evaluating if there's stress in the household. I think we commonly think that diarrhea is caused from food. Well, because they ate X, Y, and Z. I hear this a lot on nutrition consults. Well, my dog got pancreatitis because he had been eating this food for 7 months and he had a flare up one time. I'm not saying that's impossible, but given the ratio of time we're eating this food to one isolated incident, that's where I'm like, okay, let's take a step back. What else was going on in their life at the time? Did they get vaccines? Do they have anesthesia? Did they have their teeth pulled? Did you move? What was going on personally in your life and your pet's life? What changes happened? Change in chemicals. I mean, there's so many factors for us to go into rather than that food caused it. And maybe it did. Maybe it was the perfect storm. But let's take a magnifying glass and kind of look at the whole lens. And so also the importance is because certain type of bacteria are really affected in metronidazole use. And I want to discuss them, and I think I briefly discussed them in episode 6, where I talked about what I would do if my dog had diarrhea and what I did do when he had diarrhea. Fusobacterium. Fusobacterium is a really important bacteria that is in their colon and really important in protein digestion. And so dogs eat a lot of protein. And so this can then manifest in a variety of different ways. It also produces short chain fatty acids. It maintains the gut lining. And so when this fusobacterium is affected because of metronidazole, because it directly affects fusobacterium, and when I reference, hey, metronidazole goes in and it doesn't just kill the bad, it also gets rid of the good. Fusobacterium is good. Obviously, we don't want overgrowth of it, but it is good. And so, because it is an anaerobe, a type of bacteria that thrives with lack of oxygen, and that is what metronidazole targets. And so after a short course, one course, this fusobacterium can be affected for up to 2 years, a 5-day course, 2 years. And so what you may see, how it shows up, is like a mushy poop that's off and on, more gas, anal gland issues, especially because the poop is not normal. The poop quality is not great. And they do fine until they don't. Another bacteria, Bacteroides, another special bacteria because it helps digest and break down carbohydrates and fiber, especially the fiber, so important. And so it also produces short chain fatty acids, very important in helping to maintain inflammation. It also helps regulate the immune system inside the gut. And so metronidazole really affects Bacteroides as well with a short course. And so commonly shows up in sensitive stomachs, how you can't switch your dog's food. Every time you switch your dog's food, there's an issue. Itchy skin, inflammation is up, inflammation markers, if they're checked, are up. Repeated cycle of diarrhea, metronidazole, diarrhea again. Clostridium. Now there's different types of Clostridium. This is a good Clostridium that we do want. And so it helps convert bile acids to secondary bile acids. And why that is important is fats need to be digested. And so that's what I'm saying. When owners come to me and they're like, my dog got pancreatitis from this food that they were eating. And they've been eating it for a year or 7 months. And it's like, okay, has this dog had dietary issues before this? Has it had metronidazole? Maybe this type of Clostridium has been affected because then we don't have healthy fat digestion. We don't have good stool formation. We can't prevent that bile acid diarrhea that happens. So there's this cascade that happens. And so even at standard doses of metronidazole, this type of Clostridium can be greatly affected. And so you may see it as the stool is fine and then it's suddenly loose, or it's just not okay. The poop color is not normal. Maybe it's more yellow. Diarrhea is definitely prominent after really rich foods as well. They improve temporarily, but then it relapses. Again, because that root cause was not addressed. These are just 3 bacteria that are really greatly affected when your pet gets metronidazole for a 5-day course. Again, I'm not here to fearmonger. What I am is to help open your mind that especially if your dog is bright and alert and eating and happy and having some soft stool or diarrhea, we may need to pause. And if you're like, well, what do I do? Really want to encourage you to go listen to episode 6 where I talk about these things and what I did for my dog. And I also want to share a story for a pet that I had a nutrition consult with. We will call her Bella. And she is a middle-aged lab. She came to me because she was having repeated GI issues on metronidazole several times a year. And she would be seen, put on metronidazole, would get a little better, and then it would relapse. And so we had a consult, we evaluated her diet. Her parents were over the diarrhea. They were over being woken up. They were over like having to rush to the vet, and they just wanted to get more to the root cause. And I was like, but I can't tell you exactly what's going on. But what I can do is give you a roadmap of how we can adjust that. And so we evaluated her diet. We got her off the high seed oil kibble. We got her off highly processed treats. We talked about that there was recent stress in the household because of family dynamics. We switched her to a digestible diet. We talked about gut microbiome testing. We talked about allergy testing. We talked about if those didn't yield the results that we felt were appropriate, tools in our toolbox, which were glyphosate testing, mold testing, heavy metal testing, all those as well. And if you're curious about those tests, I do want to tell you about, because I can't remember what podcast it was, I just released it, about podcast episode 24, where I talk about these tests specifically. And I do want to invite you right now for your one-on-one nutrition consultation. If you're like chomping at your bit and you're like drooling out of satisfaction and you're like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I've been looking for my dog, I do want to invite you to schedule your one-on-one nutrition consultation. I will leave the link to that below. I also will leave the link to below is that if you're local to Tampa Bay area in Florida, Pinellas, Pasco, Hillsborough County, or surrounding, I do offer one-on-one in-home holistic vet visits where we talk about this very in-depthly for your pet. And so for this sweet pup, we really structured on helping to get to the root cause and giving the owner tools to use rather than metronidazole if needed. And there were some aha moments and her quality of life improved. It was not overnight. Sometimes we get really good resolution by just switching the food. Sometimes we get really lucky on removing some allergens, but also the gut has been affected. So sometimes this takes time. And over 4 months, she improved. greatly improved. The owners have asked to keep some of this a little bit more private just because they were wanting to do this. How do I say this? They respected their vet. They also wanted to know their opinion, and they asked to keep this as private as possible. And so that's why I said we will call her Bella, and I totally understand. And your pet's care should feel like a safe place where you can have these open conversations as well. And so if you are a dog or cat parent and you've been down this path of repeated diarrhea that just shows up for no reason, or you're like, yeah, my dog's been on that medicine before for diarrhea and we don't really have poop issues, but oh my gosh, the allergies, we don't understand why. We've changed this, we've done this, we've done this, we've done the Cytopoint, we've done the Apoquil, we've all of these things and still not better. Then it may be time to investigate a little bit deeper as well. Or if your vet is one of the ones who really likes leaning on metronidazole, and maybe it's because they've had really good success with it, I want you to think about whatever community group that you're in, the first one or the second one I just described. Think about the gut environment. Think about the food. Think about the lifestyle. Think about root causes. Think about the after effects. Because here, in this corner of the world, we'll call it the non-traditional corner, we're all about helping your pet live better so they can live longer. And the gut is the foundation of so much of that. It's not everything. It is not, but it is so much. Thank you for tuning in. And if you're hearing this and you're wanting more help, I really want to invite you to schedule your one-on-one nutrition consultation or your in-home holistic vet visit. Because it's important to keep your pet's gut healthy, to keep them moving. See you next time.